The crystalline spires of the Drachnid High Command pierced the violet skies of Nexus Prime like ancient daggers frozen in time. Within the highest chamber, High Marshal Krixthar stood before the floor-to-ceiling viewport, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he watched ships dart between the towers like insects. His reflection in the transparent alloy showed what generations of genetic engineering had crafted, a perfect specimen of Drachnid superiority, standing 3 meters tall with iridescent scales and eyes that gleamed with cybernetic enhancements. Another human delegation requests an audience, High Marshal, announced First Secretary Vex Lore, his voice carefully neutral. They claim to represent Earth's diplomatic corps. Krixthar's mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his kind, revealing rows of metallic teeth. How amusing. Send them to the minor reception chamber. Let them wait. The humans had been attempting diplomatic contact ever since their primitive detection systems had noticed Drachnid survey vessels at the edge of their solar system. Their persistent messages spoke of peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding, concepts Krixthar found laughably naive. In the 12,000 years of Drachnid dominion over the outer spiral, they had never encountered a species worthy of true respect. 3 hours later, Krixthar finally deigned to meet the human delegation. He had chosen the minor reception chamber deliberately. Its towering ceiling and massive architecture would make any species feel small, insignificant. But as the doors parted, he found himself studying the human who entered with unexpected interest. Ambassador Isabella Martinez walked into the chamber with measured steps, her dark eyes taking in every detail. She was small by Drachnid standards, barely reaching Krixthar's chest, yet she carried herself with an air of quiet confidence that even he had to acknowledge. Her formal attire, a simple black suit with Earth's diplomatic insignia, seemed to absorb the chamber's harsh lighting rather than reflect it. High Marshal Krixthar, she spoke in perfect Drachnid standard, her pronunciation flawless. I bring greetings from Earth's unified government. Krixthar felt a flicker of surprise at her command of his language, but didn't let it show. Your species' persistence is notable, if futile. State your purpose quickly. My time is valuable. Of course, Isabella replied, maintaining eye contact despite the significant height difference. We've noticed your survey vessels near our system. Rather than waste resources on misunderstandings, we propose establishing diplomatic relations to discuss boundaries, trade, and mutual interests. A rumbling laugh escaped Krixthar's throat. Boundaries? Trade? You speak as if your species were equals. Our civilization had mastered space travel while your kind still huddled in caves. Isabella's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened slightly. History is filled with examples of younger civilizations bringing fresh perspectives to older ones, High Marshal. We don't claim equality in terms of technological advancement, but we do assert our right to exist and develop independently. Rights are earned through power, Krixthar declared, beginning to pace around her in a deliberately intimidating circle. Your species lacks the strength to earn such consideration. Strength takes many forms, High Marshal, Isabella responded, refusing to turn to follow his movement. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in domination, but in collaboration. The next hour proceeded similarly, Isabella presenting reasonable arguments and proposals, while Krixthar dismissed them with increasing condescension. Yet something about the human's composure began to irritate him. She showed no fear, no anger, no submission. It was unsettling. As the meeting concluded, Isabella left him with words that would echo in his mind. High Marshal, remember that the greatest empires of our history often fell not through external conquest, but through their own hubris. We hope you'll reconsider our offer of friendship. The alternative would be unfortunate. Was that a threat? From this tiny creature representing a primitive species? Krixthar found himself both amused and angered by the audacity. In the following weeks, reports began flowing in of human diplomatic missions establishing contact with other species in the sector. Trade agreements were being discussed, cultural exchanges proposed. Initially, Krikstar dismissed these activities as insignificant. Let the humans waste their time with lesser races. But then came troubling intelligence. The humans were sharing their art, their music, their literature with other species. More disturbing still, these species were responding with enthusiasm. Even some of the Drachnid's traditional ally races were expressing interest in human culture. They're building relationships, First Secretary Vexlor observed during a private briefing. Not through force or technology, but through connection. Meaningless, Krikstar snapped, but doubt had begun to creep into his thoughts. He ordered increased surveillance of human activities and was disturbed by what he learned. They were adaptable, learning alien languages and customs with remarkable speed. They were innovative, finding creative solutions to overcome their technological limitations. And most worryingly, they were patient. The final straw came when he discovered that Ambassador Martinez had arranged a cultural exchange summit on a neutral world, and half the sector's species had agreed to attend. Even more shocking, some middle-ranking Drachnid officials had expressed interest in participating. Krikstar's response was swift and, in hindsight, exactly what Isabella had been waiting for. He ordered a military demonstration, a small show of force near Earth's solar system. The humans would learn their place, or they would learn fear. But as his ships moved into position, he couldn't shake the memory of Isabella's calm warning about hubris. Something in her eyes had suggested she knew more than she revealed. For the first time in his long life, High Marshal Krikstar felt a whisper of uncertainty about the future. What he didn't know was that this moment marked the beginning of his empire's greatest challenge, not from weapons or technology, but from a diplomatic revolution that would shake the foundations of everything he believed about power and strength. The Galactic Commons was housed in an ancient space station, its crystalline halls bearing witness to countless diplomatic meetings across millennia. In a secluded chamber, Ambassador Isabella Martinez sat across from Zykra, the aging representative of the Nixian Collective, a species known for their cautious neutrality in galactic affairs. Your warnings about the Drachnids are concerning, Zykra's translucent tentacles rippled with anxiety. But what you suggest, it would upset millennia of established order. Isabella placed a small holographic projector on the table. It displayed trading routes across the sector, with Drachnid military movements highlighted in red. The established order is already crumbling, Ambassador. Krikstar's recent military demonstrations aren't just aimed at Earth. They're a message to everyone: submit or be dominated. The Nixian's compound eyes studied the data carefully. Your species has been among the stars for barely a century. How can you understand the complexities? Because we've lived through similar patterns in our own history, Isabella interrupted gently. We've seen empires rise and fall. We know the signs. Meanwhile, across the station, Trade Commissioner Marcus Blackwood was engaged in his own delicate negotiation. The archivists of Tellar Prime were legendary for their vast knowledge banks and strict neutrality. Their support would be crucial. Our records indicate 17 instances where the Drachnid Empire has absorbed protectorate species, the chief archivist's metallic voice echoed in the data chamber. None have maintained their independence beyond 50 cycles. Marcus nodded, his dark skin reflecting the soft blue light of countless data streams. And how many of those species had support networks before the Drachnids moved in? None. The archivist's optical sensors whirred. Your proposal to establish a mutual defense and cultural exchange network is unprecedented. Unprecedented doesn't mean unwise, Marcus replied, sharing detailed plans for technological and cultural collaboration between Earth and Tellar Prime. Back on Nexus Prime, High Marshal Krikstar was growing increasingly agitated. Reports flooded in of human diplomatic activities across the sector. Their influence was spreading like a virus, infecting species that had long been reliable tributaries to the Drachnid Empire. They're orchestrating something, he snarled at his advisors. These diplomatic exchanges are a cover for something larger. First Secretary Vex Lore cleared his throat nervously. Our intelligence suggests they're merely establishing trade relationships and cultural pollution. Krikstar's cybernetic eyes flared. They spread their ideas like a disease. Art, music, literature, soft weapons to weaken the natural order. But even as he raged, human influence continued to grow. Isabella Martinez had mastered the art of leveraging Earth's unique strengths. Where the Drachnids offered fear and dominance, humanity offered collaboration and mutual growth. The turning point came during the Centarian Arts Festival. The Centarians, a species of energy beings known for their artistic sophistication, had invited Earth to participate. The human delegation presented a revolutionary performance, a fusion of Earth's classical music with alien harmonics, accompanied by a light sculpture that adapted to both the music and the emotional responses of the audience. The performance was transmitted across the sector. Species that had long viewed humans as primitive found themselves moved to their equivalent of tears. The Drachnids dismissed it as meaningless entertainment, but they couldn't deny its impact. They're building something more dangerous than a military alliance, Vex Lore warned Krikstar privately. They're building understanding between species. Empathy. Weakness, Krikstar spat, but his dismissal lacked its usual conviction. Isabella's network grew stronger each day. The humans had learned from their own history, the importance of soft power, the strength found in diversity, the power of cultural exchange. They weren't trying to dominate the sector, they were helping it evolve. But Krikstar wouldn't accept this new reality without a fight. His military demonstrations became more aggressive, pushing closer to Earth's allies. He expected fear, submission. Instead, he found unity. When Drachnid ships threatened a small Nixian colony, they were surprised to find Centarian energy shields protecting it, technology freely shared through the new Alliance network. When they attempted to pressure Tellar Prime economically, alternate trade routes through human-organized networks rendered their tactics ineffective. "Your strategy isn't working, Ambassador," Marcus told Isabella during a secure communication. "Krikstar is becoming more aggressive, not less." Isabella's hologram smiled slightly. "Sometimes the pot needs to boil over before you can make the perfect brew. Every aggressive move he makes proves our point about the need for unity." She had learned that the Drachnid Empire's greatest weakness wasn't military or technological, it was psychological. Their absolute belief in their superiority made them predictable. Each time Krikstar reacted with force, more species saw the wisdom in Earth's approach. The humans were playing a long game, one that Krikstar couldn't understand because it didn't fit his paradigm of power. They weren't building an army to challenge the Drachnids, they were building a community that would make the Drachnid way of life obsolete. As the second phase of their plan neared completion, Isabella prepared for another meeting with Krikstar. This time, she wouldn't come as a supplicant from a primitive species. She would come as the representative of a growing alliance that was reshaping the very fabric of galactic society. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of an entire sector of space. And Isabella Martinez, armed with nothing more than words and ideas, was about to prove that the pen was indeed mightier than the sword, even when that sword was a planet-destroying warship. The attack on the Proxima Cultural Exchange Station came without warning. Drachnid warships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already charged. The station, a symbol of interspecies cooperation, stood no chance against such overwhelming force. Or so Krikstar thought. As the first plasma torpedoes approached the station, they encountered something unexpected, a shield technology unlike anything the Drachnids had seen before. A seamless fusion of Centarian energy manipulation, Tellarite quantum mechanics, and human innovative engineering. "Impossible," Krikstar whispered, watching the tactical display from his command center. The station should have been vaporized. Instead, it stood untouched, surrounded by a shimmering barrier that had absorbed the attack as if it were nothing more than a light show. Ambassador Isabella Martinez's hologram materialized in his command center, her expression grave. Was this really necessary, High Marshal? An unprovoked attack on a civilian research station? You dare lecture me about provocation? Krikstar's cybernetic eyes blazed. Your species has been undermining our authority across the sector. This station is a symbol of your corruption. No, Isabella replied calmly. It's a symbol of what's possible when species work together instead of trying to dominate each other. That shield protecting the station? It's the result of cooperation between 12 different species, each contributing their unique knowledge. As they spoke, something unprecedented was happening across the sector. The attack on the station had triggered a cascade of prearranged responses. Trade routes to Drachnid worlds began shutting down. Longtime allies publicly denounced their actions. The carefully constructed network that Isabella had built over months sprang into action. You've accomplished nothing, Krikstar sneered. We are self-sufficient. We don't need the commerce of lesser beings. Are you? Isabella's hologram walked around his command center, passing through solid objects like a ghost. Your empire's strength isn't built on self-sufficiency, High Marshal. It's built on the exploitation of other species. Species who are now choosing a different path. Reports began flooding in. The Nixians had closed their antimatter refineries to Drachnid ships. The Centaurians were withdrawing their maintenance crews from Drachnid space stations. The Tellarites had suspended access to their data networks. Piece by piece, the infrastructure that the Drachnids had taken for granted began to crumble. But the real shock came from within. Younger Drachnids, those who had been secretly following human cultural transmissions, began questioning their society's isolationist policies. They had seen something in human art, music, and literature that resonated with long-suppressed aspects of their own nature. Your own people are awakening, High Marshal, Isabella continued. They're beginning to remember that before the genetic engineering, before the cybernetic enhancements, the Drachnids were known for their poetry. Their music. Their art. Krikstar's response was predictable. He ordered a full military mobilization. But even this played into Isabella's strategy. The moment Drachnid warships began moving in force, 100 automated beacons activated across the sector, broadcasting evidence of Drachnid atrocities that had been carefully documented and verified by the Tellarite archivists. We didn't come into space looking for enemies, Isabella's voice softened. We came looking for friends, for partners in the great adventure of exploration and discovery. Even now, that offer stands. The command center was chaos as reports of defections poured in. Minor client species, emboldened by the human-led alliance, were declaring independence. Drachnid colony worlds were requesting membership in the new cooperative network. You've destroyed everything, Krikstar snarled. No, Isabella corrected him. We've helped birth something new. Your empire isn't being destroyed, High Marshal. It's being transformed. The only question is whether you'll be part of that transformation or be left behind by it. The next 24 hours were crucial. Across Drachnid space, younger military officers, inspired by human ideals of cooperation and tired of endless conflict, began standing down their forces. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained control for millennia was cracking. Marcus Blackwood, coordinating from the Tellarite Archive Station, ensured that every Drachnid world had access to uncensored information about what was happening. The truth, so long suppressed by Krikstar's regime, became a weapon more powerful than any warship. Your choice now, Isabella told Krikstar, is between evolution and extinction. Not of your species, but of your way of life. The galaxy is changing. The only question is whether the Drachnids will change with it. In that moment, facing the most significant crisis in their history, the Drachnid Empire stood at a crossroads. Their military might, once the foundation of their power, had been rendered obsolete not by superior weapons, but by superior ideas. And as Krixthar watched his empire transforming before his eyes, he finally began to understand what Isabella had meant about hubris. The humans hadn't needed to defeat the Drachnids in battle. They had simply shown the galaxy, including the Drachnids themselves, that there was a better way. The revolution wasn't fought with weapons. It was fought with art, with ideas, with cooperation and hope. And against these forces, even the mighty Drachnid Empire found itself powerless to resist. As the third phase of their plan concluded, Isabella prepared for the final confrontation. But this time, she wouldn't be facing Krixthar alone. Behind her stood not just humanity, but a united galaxy ready to step into a new era of cooperation and mutual understanding. The stage was set for the final act of this galactic drama, and the outcome would reshape the future of all species involved. The Grand Council chamber of Nexus Prime had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from 37 species filled the ancient hall, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic civilization. At the center of it all stood Isabella Martinez, her simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate regalia of the assembled aliens. High Marshal Krixthar sat in his elevated throne, but it no longer dominated the chamber as it once had. The events of the past weeks had stripped away much of its psychological power. The Drachnid Empire stands at a crossroads, Isabella began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Today, we're not here to condemn or to punish, but to offer a new path forward. She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber's center. It showed a complex network of trade routes, cultural exchanges, and technological collaborations, all bypassing traditional Drachnid control points. This network already exists, she continued. It's been operating in parallel with the old system for months. The difference is that now, we're inviting the Drachnid Empire to join it as equals, not rulers. Krixthar's cybernetic eyes flared. You speak of equality while threatening our very way of life. No, Marcus Blackwood stepped forward, carrying a data crystal. We're offering you evolution instead of extinction. The Tellarite archives have documented 342 empires that fell because they couldn't adapt to changing circumstances. We're offering you the chance to be the exception. The data crystal contains something unprecedented, a complete economic and social transition plan, collaboratively developed by experts from dozens of species, including reform-minded Drachnids. It showed how the Empire could transform from a dominion based on fear to a confederation built on mutual benefit. Your military strength remains unmatched, Isabella acknowledged. But strength without purpose is meaningless. What if that strength could be redirected toward exploration? Toward protecting trading routes from pirates? Toward scientific advancement? As she spoke, more holographic displays activated, showing possibilities that even Krixthar had never considered. Drachnid warships escorting scientific expeditions into uncharted space. Drachnid genetic engineering expertise being used to cure diseases across multiple species. Drachnid architectural excellence creating wonders that would draw visitors from across the galaxy. Your people were artists once, Isabella reminded him. Scientists. Philosophers. The cybernetic enhancements, the genetic modifications, they were meant to perfect your species, not limit it. The chamber erupted in discussion as species after species pledged support for the transition plan. Even longtime Drachnid allies were openly backing the proposal, seeing it as a way to maintain their relationships while embracing a new galactic order. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. Junior Commander Vex Nor, Krixthar's own nephew, stepped forward. His scales still gleamed with youth, and his cybernetic enhancements were of the latest generation. Uncle, he addressed Krixthar directly, breaking centuries of protocol. I've been studying human history. They call this a watershed moment, a time when the flow of history can take one of two paths. We can cling to our past and fade into obsolescence, or we can help shape the future. The chamber fell silent. Such direct challenge to authority was unprecedented in Drachnid society. Yet instead of punishment, Vexnor's words met with subtle signs of approval from many Drachnid officials. Isabella watched carefully. This was the moment she had been orchestrating for months, not a military confrontation, but a cultural awakening. The younger generation of Drachnids, exposed to new ideas through the cultural exchange programs, was ready for change. "The choice before us isn't between strength and weakness," she said into the silence. "It's between stagnation and growth. Between isolation and connection. Between fear and hope." As she spoke, more holographic displays activated, showing the immediate benefits of cooperation. New technologies that could only be developed through collaboration. Medical breakthroughs waiting to happen. Scientific mysteries that could only be solved by combining the knowledge of multiple species. "Your empire doesn't need to end, High Marshal," Isabella continued. "It needs to transform. And we're all here, every species in this chamber, ready to help with that transformation." Crixthar sat motionless on his throne, his cybernetic eyes scanning the chamber. He saw the determination in the faces of the younger Drachnids, the hope in the eyes of former subject species, the quiet confidence of the human delegation. For the first time in his long life, he faced a force that couldn't be defeated by traditional means. It wasn't an army or a weapon, it was an idea. An idea of a galaxy where strength came from cooperation rather than domination. As the fourth phase of their plan reached its climax, Isabella held her breath. Everything hinged on this moment. She had played a long game, positioning pieces across the galactic chessboard with patience and precision. Now it was time to see if Crixthar would recognize the checkmate for what it was, not a defeat, but an opportunity for transformation. The fate of galaxies hung in the balance, waiting for the High Marshal's response. And in that pregnant silence, the future of multiple civilizations waited to be born. The silence in the Grand Council chamber stretched like an elastic band ready to snap. High Marshal Crixthar rose from his throne, his towering form casting a long shadow across the chamber floor. Every eye, organic and cybernetic alike, focused on him. "In 12,000 years of Drachnid history," he began, his voice resonating with the weight of centuries, "we have never bowed to another species." He paused, his cybernetic eyes scanning the chamber. "And today, we shall not bow either. We shall adapt." The word sent ripples through the assembled delegates. Isabella maintained her composed exterior, but internally, her heart raced. This was the moment that would define a new era in galactic history. "The human ambassador speaks of transformation," Crixthar continued. "Our ancestors engineered our bodies for perfection, enhanced our minds with technology. Perhaps it is time to engineer our society with equal vision." Junior Commander Vexnor stepped forward again. "High Marshal, the diplomatic corps has prepared immediate implementation protocols for the transition." What followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Over the next several hours, the framework of a new galactic order took shape. The Drachnid Empire would not dissolve, but evolve into something new, the Drachnid Cooperative, a founding member of the newly established Galactic Confederation. Isabella watched as former enemies became architects of a shared future. The Nixians offered their expertise in sustainable energy. The Centaurians proposed new forms of faster-than-light travel. The Tellarites opened their vast archives for shared research. And the Drachnids, to everyone's surprise, began sharing their advanced biotechnology. "You planned this all along," Crixthar said privately to Isabella during a brief recess. Every move, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic initiative, it was all leading to this moment. Isabella smiled. "We learned from our own history that lasting change can't be forced through violence. It has to grow organically, through understanding and mutual benefit. We didn't want to defeat you, High Marshal. We wanted to help you become something greater." The transformation was not instantaneous, nor was it without challenges. Centuries of imperial culture couldn't be changed overnight. But the foundation was laid for something remarkable. Within months, the first joint scientific expeditions launched into unexplored space. Drachnid warships, repurposed as exploration vessels, carried mixed crews of scientists from dozens of species. Their genetic engineering expertise, once used for military enhancement, now focused on curing diseases that had plagued multiple species. Perhaps most surprisingly, Drachnid culture began to flourish in unexpected ways. The younger generation, freed from the constraints of militant imperialism, rediscovered their species' ancient artistic heritage. The first Drachnid poetry in millennia was performed at the Centarian Arts Festival, moving audiences with its blend of ancient tradition and modern perspective. 1 year after the historic council meeting, Isabella stood in her office on Earth, watching a holographic feed from Nexus Prime. The city had transformed. Where once stood monuments to military might, now rose centers of learning and cultural exchange. Crixtar himself had become an unexpected advocate for change, his experience and authority helping guide his people through the transition. "We didn't just change the Drachnids," Marcus Blackwood observed, joining her at the window. "We changed ourselves. The entire galaxy has changed." Isabella nodded. The humans' role as catalysts for change had earned them respect across the galaxy, but more importantly, it had shown that different species could work together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The final piece fell into place when the Galactic Confederation officially opened its headquarters, not on Earth, not on Nexus Prime, but on a newly constructed station at the intersection of major trade routes. Its design incorporated elements from all member species, Drachnid engineering, Centarian energy systems, human innovation, and countless other contributions. As Isabella prepared for her new role as the first Secretary-General of the Confederation, she reflected on the journey. What had started as a desperate diplomatic mission to prevent war had evolved into something far more profound, a fundamental reshaping of galactic society. "We stand at the dawn of a new era," she addressed the opening ceremony. "Not as conquerors or conquered, not as superior or inferior, but as partners in the greatest adventure our species have ever undertaken, the exploration and understanding of not just space, but of each other." In the vastness of space, a new chapter had begun. The age of empires had given way to an age of cooperation, proving that the greatest power in the universe wasn't force or technology, but the ability to bring people together for a common purpose. And as the stars wheeled overhead, countless species looked to the future not with fear, but with hope, a hope born from the understanding that together, they could achieve things that none of them could have accomplished alone. The story of how a human diplomat's wisdom shattered an alien general's arrogance became legend, taught in schools across the galaxy as a reminder that true strength lies not in domination, but in the courage to change and grow together.